Hi everyone. Today we have a special guest, Matthew, who just recently joined Reviv, and I think he's got a very interesting story that includes extractions, orthodontics from a pretty young age, and I think telling his story will be quite interesting. It might resonate with quite a number of folks out there. Matthew, welcome.
Hey, nice to be here. Yeah. I've been aware for a while of these negative impacts of wisdom tooth extractions and, being all over Reddit and like arguing with people. Like I put some pictures up of myself and basically being gaslighted into, it doesn't affect anything. I've joined a group with other people that had extractions and they're noticing changes in their face and everyone's telling them, well, it's normal to your face to change as you get older and basically being gaslighted about this, right? So wisdom tooth extractions is one thing, and it's really, I had them done, I want to say 15 years ago. I think I was about 20 years old, and it's funny that I had no clue. I had no clue. It didn't even occur to me that this would affect anything. And, coming to find out years later, as this stuff has kind of blown up with like the whole mewing and orthotropics community, and that's where I started hearing about this. And yes, at Reddit mostly, and then there's a couple health forums I was into. There was that former Ray Pete forum, which was health and nutrition based, but a lot of people, they're very out of the box thinking, so they found some of this stuff. And I met someone from that forum, and we became very good friends. And we've been talking about this stuff. He was telling me about this like Frankfurt plane thing where basically, this line from here to here and, you go the nasion and down to your, because his chin is very far back. He's like, oh, my mandible receded. He's like, my face grew down. And anyway, the gist of that is it's taken me a very long time to become aware that it's like, oh, of course, pulling teeth out is going to have an effect on your skull. I mean, it seems intuitive. But just being steeped in this culture of it is so routine, it's not even questioned. It's like my teeth were not even impacted that badly. I had no discomfort whatsoever. It felt fine. I can actually remember sitting there when I had this picture taken with my sister and I was smiling. And I remember prior to that, using my tongue to feel my wisdom teeth coming in and they felt fine. But the thing that really kind of got me down this path was originally the aesthetics. Because it was like my friend had the same thing where he didn't realize is like.
This is recently or like when you?
I would say within the past couple years, like it's pretty recently. Like I've been aware of this mewing stuff for quite a while. Like I'd say maybe even at least the last 6 years, probably. I mean, at least maybe more, maybe even the last 10 years. But I didn't really become totally aware. Like I saw the V-shaped palate and I'm like, okay, that makes sense that it's meant to form around the tongue. It should be more of a U, but I didn't really do a deep dive. And then it was talking to my friend who mentioned that like, I don't know the facial structure terms. I didn't get into the communities, all the looks maxing and all that stuff. I never got into it. So I was coming more from a health perspective and like airways. And it wasn't until I met my friend who was in that community where he's like, oh, this really affects your facial attractiveness. And then it kind of clicked and I started looking back at pictures of myself and videos I had from before the wisdom tooth extractions. And I became very distressed. I was like, oh my God. I was looking at pictures of myself from 14 years old. And I feel like my face now more closely resembles my face at 14 than it did at like 20 before I had all 4 wisdom teeth extracted. Like these pictures I had of myself, my jaw was much more angular. My face was wider. From a health perspective, what's very fascinating is I didn't even think of this. This is literally the last week since I found Reviv and joined the community.
And how did you find Reviv?
It was an ad. I can't remember which app it was on. I'm on like Instagram, TikTok. I think it was one of those. And it was like I kept seeing stuff pop up and I was like, because I'm searching stuff all the time on, facial structure and this, and it kind of must have just come up. And I'm like, wow, that looks really interesting. So I kind of was one of those things I kind of bookmarked and forgot about it, but then it kept popping up and popping up. I'm like, all right, I'm going to see what this is about. And immediately.
We get like so much hate from dentists on these ads because we say like, oh, We say like whatever we want, which is not typical on ads. And
I
then we're
can
all like every day we're like getting some deads like, oh, you're talking bullshit. But
exact.
I
Oh,
know
I
it's not.
am.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I am. It's very, and I immediately, some people you can just click with right away because it's like from what the field I come from. So I was doing all kinds of stuff with like neurolinguistic programming and like working with people with trauma and my own stuff. So this
Right.
kind of ties in with
Like
the
your
braces and all
own
this.
career, or you do NLP as like a
I
professional.
was, I was at a time, and it was mostly I did a lot of training for this. I'd worked with a lot of people and it's like these, and again, we talk about out of the box thinking, right? Like I was put on psychiatric medications from a very young age. And it's so interesting how all of this ties together because I got into this community, and I'll keep this brief to stay on topic, but it's called PSSD, post SSRI sexual dysfunction. And, basically, like you said, you get all this hate from dentists. It's like there are people that I know, this is really bad stuff. Like a lot of friends I've had lost their lives to they couldn't cope with it anymore, like the damage from these drugs. And they'll get psychiatrists like hating on them, like they're expressing grief over like, hey, my friend literally had to end their life because they were suffering so bad. And then you'll get a bunch of people, there's no empathy.
Mm.
It's like, oh, well, it's not the drugs. Like those are helping people, they're saving lives. And, the out of the box thinking kind of comes in with I'm very familiar with having opinions outside of the norm, and it's just not accepted.
Yeah.
Like you're not even allowed. It's now professionally what I do is guitar repairs. I do guitar customizations. That's my main gig. And it's funny
You
because
own
even,
your own business.
yeah, yep. It's
Cool.
like
Cool.
for what I'm doing now, actually, and this is part of why I got in the Revive community, I would actually call it more of a full-time hobby, right? Like I'm very steeped in it, but because of my issues, it's like I have mostly now it's the physical stuff. I made a lot of progress, mental, emotional, but the chronic fatigue never went away. And it's like I'm going to be 36 years old this year. And it's like my life has just never been able to take off. It's like I still live with my parents and I work as hard as I can. I mean, I really will be so meticulous, but I have this pattern of I will just be like focusing like a laser beam, getting a lot of work done. And then I'm just like, I will crash and I just can't, like I have all the skills and the knowledge to do all these jobs, but I just don't have the gas. I can't do it. It's like I can't
Yeah,
run
yeah,
the
yeah.
business. I can't build it. I can't scale it. It's like everything is so hard.
I think
Yeah.
what you're saying there is so interesting because I think there's an entire like generation of people that did ortho and extractions at a young age, and they just never got out of the blocks. Like I was lucky. I got hit. Most of my problems happened when I was 37 years old or so. I had some back and neck pain, but I got out of the blocks clean, led a good life, had a decent career and savings and whatnot. And then this shit hit. And so I knew what to miss. Like I knew what it was like to have a good career and everything and then lose it. Whereas like I see so many young people now where like they're like yourself, like they just can't get it together enough to like progress. And I know what that feels like, and it's not their fault. Like it's physical. So that's I think like what you're saying is gonna resonate across like millions of young Americans.
Oh yeah. And it's like, it's crazy, right? Because again, we have the psych drugs and I'm like, those are definitely their own thing, but it's like a huge blind spot. When I found this, I didn't even think about it. I'm like, it all happened around the same time, right? But braces came first, which is interesting because I noticed within several years, I got put on Lexapro and Zyprexa when I was about 13-ish,
You did
13,
the braces
14.
around 10, you said?
Around 10. I remember it could have even been earlier, but I clearly remember being in 5th grade, at which time I was like 10 to 11 years old in 5th grade. And I remember being on a field trip, we're out and I remember having that special floss, like that floss you use for braces. And I remember it was such a pain to use it, but I do remember that at like 10 years old.
And so by 13, you were on psychiatry drugs.
They put me
And
on,
what
yeah, it
was
was like,
what was the impetus?
so the impetus was, it's funny thinking back. I mean, probably the main thing is I started the self-mutilation. I started cutting myself and it was like, this is back around 2002. Like it wasn't a thing. I didn't know anybody that did that. I wasn't even aware it was a thing. I was just so distressed. It just seemed
At
natural to
13
start.
years old.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
what kind of like group were you in? Were you in any kind of group in school or?
No, I was definitely a loner. I was very, and this is a thing too. Now it's funny because I think I had braces. It's possible I had them before 10, but I think I saw one of your articles about bullying. I was bullied by 2 kids that were my friends, and it was horrible, right? This is all around the age of 9, 10 years old.
Yeah.
It might have preceded braces, maybe, but it was all adjacent. Like, again, I'm saying I know for a fact I had them at 10. It could have been even earlier. But anyway, yeah, it was basically the trajectory was, the bullying. And it's funny because I remember being younger, like I was much more outgoing. I remember I would actually be the one, like I wouldn't care. Like kids are all playing out on the field, playing soccer, and I didn't really have any friends. And I would just run out and start playing. Like I didn't care. Be slide tackling people. I'd be doing stuff like I was very kind of hyper, and it could be aggressive and outgoing. And then, it was kind of like the bullying, I think, and the braces, this is all adjacent, right? And then this kind of, with the bullying, caused me to withdraw into myself. And then I got really into video games and talking to people more on forums online as opposed to interacting in person. And it just became this, your typical teenage boy, like talking to people online, getting like addicted to porn, and then like just withdrawing into myself completely. No friends,
And psychiatrist was like driven by the school or your parents around 13 years old?
Yeah, I remember it started with like the guidance counselor, and then it kind of snowballed
Okay.
from there. Then they're like, okay, you need to get into therapy. And then, of course the therapist didn't really care about, what was going on. They were just like, oh, you need to get on an SSRI. That's and that's when stuff really started going downhill. And like my problems got progressively far worse, so it was like basically, and it's funny because it is all fresh in my mind, because when you mentioned the braces, I was like, I never even I was so fixated on the wisdom teeth extractions.
Yeah. The wisdom teeth happened what year?
I would say, well, let's see. I was born in 1989, and I was about 20, so I want to say like 2009,
Okay,
roughly.
yeah. Yeah,
Probably.
you were damaged well before the wisdom teeth.
Right, and it's funny because I always thought like, oh, the teeth extractions, up until I
Yeah.
found your Reviv,
Yeah.
Substack and started reading, it never even occurred to me that the braces caused any kind of, it never even occurred to me. Never even thought about it, And so very interestingly,
One
the
other
prog
quick question,
oh,
just 'cause
yeah.
maybe folks are wondering like I am, like, wait, SSRI is like antidepressants or what exactly is that?
Yes, yep, yeah, Lexapro is an antidepressant, so a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, and soon after that, I was put on Zyprexa, which the generic name is olanzapine. That's an atypical antipsychotic, which is very potent,
Yeah.
and I think both of those together, these are like mega drugs for children to be on. And now, of
Yeah.
course, they've linked a lot of antidepressant use to like all, aggression, people being like homicidal, suicidal, like it's crazy because that's what I went through, but, and basically progressively, like I dropped out of college, like all this continues going on where I had my hobbies, but I was very like, oh, the emotional distress was so bad. It was just, I just felt just horrible all the time. And it's like, even the stuff I love to do, I could not integrate it.
How were your parents doing with this in high school?
Oh, it was horrible. I mean, it's like now things are a lot better, it's like over the years, but it was absolutely horrible.
Horrible for them or they were horrible for you? Like, what do you mean horrible?
I would say it would be both, because it was like it felt horrible for me, because like my
Yeah.
parents had no idea what was going on, and it was just, what's really sad is like how common it is. But I mean, there was things. I mean, I just lose my head over stuff. It's like this is when I had a couple times I was involuntarily committed to mental hospitals.
Really? By your parents?
Oh, this is actually by friend. This is over me. It was the classic, like they were worried I was going to commit suicide, and then they call the police. And then this is the case where it's like the cops just come into your house. It was like both cases, like 3 o'clock in the morning. They just take you. You're just gone. You're getting loaded up.
Wow. 'Cause your friend said something.
And out of concern, this is another thing too. Like they're really worried, like I'm going to do something to hurt myself. So they're like, we got to get him. So they meant well, but it's still kind of a traumatizing experience. It's like getting woken up by cops and just taken out of your home. But oh, it was very difficult on my parents. It's like they had no idea. I mean, of
You
course,
were only child or no?
I have a sister, so I have, and she's older, so she had moved out already. Was doing her own thing. Now, interestingly, because I know she also had orthodontic treatment as well. It's like, but kind of integrated better. I think it could potentially have been a similar thing you had where it was like stuff didn't really, she's had a lot of problems, but I mean, she, for all intents and purposes, she's been able to integrate into the world, like has her own place, has a career, getting married, having a kid, all that stuff, where it's like, for me, it's like, failure to launch. Like I'm a lot more stable now. I'm actually extremely stable, but it's as a result of like, being dependent on my parents. It's like, I'm going to be 36. It's like, I'm single. I have no kids. No, not really an independent career. It's like I have skills I've built. It was very tough on them because, of course, like all the stuff you're talking about, I've been following health stuff for over 20 years. I mean, since I was 15, I've been obsessed, like health, nutrition, exercise, and just everything I can read. And it never would have occurred to me in a million years that braces, of all things, could have played a role in this mental and emotional. Because I remember the difficulties. Like I remember having what I would just call fatigue attacks, and people would just give me shit for it. They're like, "Oh, you're way too." I'd be like 15, and I was just like, it just felt like my brain would shut down. Like I'm so tired. Like brain fog. I'm like I can't process what's in front of me, and I started failing. It's a miracle I passed high school. And the ironic thing is, I remember before braces, as a young kid, I was always like straight A student. I was very smart. I remember wanting to be a physicist when I was like 7 or 8 years old. I was reading
You
these
seem
books on
very
like,
smart. Yeah, like I'm sure you are, like IQ wise, and as soon as you like as you get healthier, I think you're gonna really realize your potential.
well, it's so interesting because I'm still waiting, right, on my Revive to come in. I just jumped into the community and I got like a overnight. It was like, oh, it'll be here today, the shock doctor mouth guard, and it's funny that over the past, it's maybe only been even 5 days ish.
That
And
you're wearing
I
socks
know,
out there.
yeah. And I know you
Yeah.
said it's from what I've seen of it, right? It seems fairly aggressive. Like it's taller than the Revive. And it's like, it
Yeah.
reminded me of having braces where, I could feel like you get that tooth sensitivity. Like it was almost very similar to that soreness. And, I don't know if you can see here, my teeth have changed over time, like this gap here. Um, these are terrible. Like my
Yeah.
gums receding like crazy. So that's one thing too that
With
I
the
was like,
shock doctor.
oh no, I mean, oh yeah,
Oh,
I just started
before.
wearing it, but yeah, I've had this for years and I don't know
Yeah.
what, like, I mean, again, the camera's not the greatest, but especially down here. Like, look at that.
Yeah, 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 I see. Okay.
And like that, all dark yellow is like dentin. And I have it up here. It's like, I hate going to the dentist for anything because it's like the cleanings, it's like being tortured. And I don't know to this day, because I never really brushed that aggressively. I'm not aware of any clenching or grinding, but I'm like, man, I have all this major gum recession for years. Like I think I had a gum graft done that kind of failed. That was done maybe 5 years ago on my bottom two front teeth, but I've had that for, and I've always suspected, like since finding this, I mean, do you think that like the orthodontic treatment and these tooth extractions can play a role in that gum recession?
Absolutely.
Or, yeah, because
Like
that I
it's
never had.
100%. Like I saw there's one story, I think I told it in one post, but it taught me so much about the human mouth. Was in 2018, late 2018, I was in Russia and I had met this dentist and I wanted to try it. He was doing a French method called Soule Besson because they also sell appliances called Sodas, and I was kind of bought in. It's a bit similar, but they lock an occlusion by putting composite over all your teeth. They put composite over all my teeth, built up the height, but created this artificial occlusion. And like it didn't matter. Like I flossed 5 times a day. I brushed my teeth 5 times a day. Like it was more than 2 or 3x what I normally was, and I had 2 or 3 cavities within a month or two, and plus there was gum issues. And I was like, wow, like you change the structure of your mouth, like that's like the worst thing.
Wow, wow. Yeah, I've been trying to read too. I know about your story. I'm so curious, right? Because it's like I clearly, like, you've been through a lot and have done a lot of research and self-experimentation. It's like I felt like a kindred spirit kind of, because I'm like, this is exactly the out of the box thinking, even in something as like what do you call it? Like a luxury item, like a guitar. I'm just shocked. Like you'd think that like in that community, it's the same thing. Like you start doing things in a different way, like the way you're building them or doing them is a little different, and then you get people dogpiling on you like, this guy sucks, he doesn't know what he's doing, and they'll just it's like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
so funny that this herd mentality. It reminded me of that guy, I forget whoever it was that like really discovered hand washing. He was like, hey, people are dying, like, and he just came up and he had no scientific explanation for why washing your hands prevented all these, like mortalities. So people were, I think he was actually thrown in a mental institution and his life ended with him getting beaten to death in a mental hospital for like, and it's like, and of course, the people were making fun of him, like, oh, this is so stupid. It's all, this is satanic or it's this or it's not scientific. And of course, now, hundreds of years later or however long it's been, like, yeah, hand washing is a really good idea. It's like, and we know why, but anyway.
Yeah, I think one point to that, like I think when the world starts to get this, like at scale, I don't know when that is, maybe 10 years from now, whatever. But like they're gonna realize just how stupid we were that we missed it. Like this stuff is not rocket science. Like people like, "Ken, you like, how did you figure this out?" Like, this is like I was drilling splints and I noticed that, if I did yoga and I did things to improve it, like the curve went up. And if I like left it open, the curve dropped. Like that was all. Like that is all you needed to do to figure this out. Like, and here we are. Like we developed this big mess of a medical system, which I think they're gonna figure out like wasn't needed.
Right, I
So
completely agree. I completely agree. It is a little crazy to think. It's like, yeah, we're in the dark ages. Like we're the people with, what was it, the Romans with like lead pipes for their water supply. Oh my God, how could they do that? It's like, well, it's like this exactly the same thing that we have now. And on that note, I thought I know I'd made a comment in the community. I was thinking about oral posture. I mean, I'm sure you've heard about that endlessly. I know you said you have some pretty interesting criticisms, right, of the mewing community where they're kind of claiming they have it all figured out. And like the problem is the improper oral posture. And that's what's causing, you know what I mean? It's like, it's very interesting that I had never even questioned that. I'm thinking, oh, orthotropics was the answer. They cracked the code. Like it never even occurred to me that there could be blind spots with what you know what I mean? Like that's what it was so interesting when I found this. I was like, I just, similarly to how people are brainwashed, this is another thing. I don't hold it against any, but my parents didn't know. They had no idea, so it's like you get braces. They think they really believe they're doing something really nice to help you out. And, so similarly, up until very recently, like this past week, it's like I was wholesale mewing orthotropics. I'm like, oh, if you have kids, you just train them, like everything will be perfect, and that's the solution. And it's kind of like, I never even questioned, like maybe there are blind spots there. And you mentioned all these, like, and I've heard a lot of people in some of these groups getting screwed up by these like palate expander devices and these other things. They find out they've been damaged and they try to fix it with these devices. And a lot of them end up worse, and
of
it's
course,
like,
yeah, palate expander is as bad as braces a lot of times. Like it depends what kind of palate expander. Like palate expanders are okay if they prop you up on a composite turbos a lot of time because that'll stretch the soft tissue so that you're doing less damage. But, yeah, I've seen certain people that didn't have anything propping up the bite and did a palate expander, like, they got really messed up.
man, it's so interesting, and again, flashing forward to my background with guitars, that it seems to me like they're mechanical objects, right? So to me, it's like there's all this mysticism and stuff in the community. I'm like, no, it's a very straightforward mechanical object. It follows the laws of physics. I'm like, there's a way that it will work optimally. And it seems to elude people. To me, it was like, why did nobody teach us? I've been doing it for 20 years. And, you just learned you adjust this by feel and you play it. And if it feels, I said, well, no, now I do everything digitally. It's like I can measure exactly where it is. I know where it has to be. It's very straightforward. So it's kind of always occurred to me too with the human body, like all these other creatures and animals in the world. It's like why humans struggle so much. It's like, especially in modern society, like we've gotten so far away. I'm like, you said, it's funny that you said it's very simple, right? The solution where it's like all this other stuff, you'd think you'd have to have a doctorate. And I'm like, all this stuff with like orthotropics, and you're like, oh, well, you have to know this and you have to know that. And then the whole nutrition circle where it's like, oh, it's the, nutrition when you're in the womb and it causes this. And I do think these things can all play a role. Like you said, if you're born like with your skull compressed, like I had a friend that when they were born, like the doctor kind of partially crushed their head with forceps while they're trying to, that'll do a number on, like,
Yeah, and the
yeah.
thing that I like to always mention here is, like, I lived in Boston in 17 and 18, and my kid was 3 or 4 years old, so I'd see the kids that were his age, and, like, I would say 70 to 80% of kids were already messed up, right? So, and
Wow.
this is of course pre-ortho or anything. Like when I say messed up, it just means like, okay, he's clear, like he doesn't have a good profile. Like how many American kids in a suburb these days, like even at 4 or 5 years old, like you can tell, like they don't really have a proper profile. Like their body is a little bit off. Like how many kids have a perfect body at 4 years old? Like very, very few in America at this point. This thing declines. And so you just logically gotta think about, alright, like, if 70, 80% of kids that are 4 years old in America are already messed up, like, there must be a way that you're inheriting it, but it cannot be genetic because this thing's cycling down too fast. And so, therefore, it has to be something that either happens in the mother or during birth, and that's where, like, I pieced together what this osteopath was telling me years back, Dr. Jackman, that he could feel a newborn's head and feel kind of like what the mother's compressions and, and misalignments were. So that's where I was like, "Oh, wow, okay, so, like, the key comes out, and an osteopath can figure out, like, where the mother was misaligned, so therefore, like, the mother's misalignments are causing these compressions, and then the kid's be getting screwed up right out of the gates, and so therefore, like, any mother that's misaligned is gonna screw up her kid." It's like, how many mothers are screwed up by the time they have a kid in America now? It's like 90%. So, like, this thing's just gonna get worse until there's nobody, like, there's gonna be almost no, like, healthy people left, like, if we didn't bring this to light.
Right. Oh, it just reminds me that I don't know if you've heard of Pottinger's cats, right? And that whole experiment.
Yeah.
And very interestingly, yeah, it was back years ago. Matt Stone of 180 Degree Health had a blog, and I remember he wrote an article on this woman that had grown up in Kenya. Her life was horrible, right? War zone, all the worst stuff you can imagine, but she was very healthy. So, like, no PTSD, despite stuff happening that would cause PTSD in most people. Perfect art, dental arches, everything. Like, basically the picture of health, right? And she's basically living on, I think, sugary breakfast cereals was the main thing, like Gatorade, other stuff, like not a great diet, very healthy, but what's interesting is her children are born and now they had all these issues, right? Her children are born and their teeth are crooked. They got allergies. They have, and one thing before I forgot the circumstances of my birth. So I was born premature. I was C-section, emergency C-section. My mother almost died giving birth to me. And then I had multiple birth defects. It's like we have one kidney, hypoplastic thumb, like no muscle on this thumb, Horner's syndrome, which is like drooping eyelid. And I have scoliosis due to an extra half a vertebrae in my spine. So there's a misalignment I've always had. So there is that anomaly where they have an extra piece of bone that's not supposed to be there. And then you wonder how much they might have screwed up symmetry further. Like they put a lift in my shoe as I was growing up, right? So it's like I had my right foot shorter. They put a lift in. And, but no, I agree 100% with what you're saying, that it's like, and people don't know. So like people could be getting more and more asymmetrical, more and more problems. And then I know the cognitive, neurological, and physical effects of being screwed up was like, you can't function.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, 2 things I wanted to add to what you were saying. So, like, the fact that you had birth defects, like, I think that is directly correlated to the fact that you needed braces at 10 years old. Like, so the way you came out is the reason why things didn't extrude properly and blah, 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 and, like, so those things are very connected. The other thing I wanna say is, like, you talked about this African woman. I was telling you the other day, like, I was paying attention to PTSD soldiers, and I was like, "Wow," like, I was watching this program a while back. It was a documentary, and, like, all the PTSD soldiers, like, you could tell, like, they didn't have the proper structure. Some of them weren't too bad, but, like, whereas, like, nobody was, like, perfectly, like, spine and whatnot. And that I think the body's ability to handle stress is so much more powerful when your structure's getting good. I try to explain to people, like, I forgot what it's like to feel depressed. Like, I'm just energized and happy 24 hours a day. Someone could tell some bad shit to me, and I'll be like, "Oh, yeah, like, that sucks." And then I'll be, like, laughing, like, 5 minutes later. Like, I'd still feel it.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's crazy because you see, some of these videos where people travel around the world, and I remember this. There was that book George Catlin wrote. I think it was it was like 1869 or something. It was called "Shut Your Mouth and Save Your Life." This is where he's aware. Now he was living among Native Americans, and he's like, "Wow, these people have like beautiful wide faces, like perfect dental arches." And he started noticing, and they had some kind of like, I forget what they were, but kind of like some slurs for like the white people that were colonizing, and like their faces were all very long and like narrow, and they know, it's like people are aware of this, right? They didn't know the mechanics that were causing it. So back then, this George Catlin, he noticed like their babies would be falling asleep, and these Native Americans, they said if, they'd kind of, gently, if they were mouth breathing, he's like, oh, they
Yeah, yeah.
gently close their
Yeah, I
jaws a
read the
little
book.
bit.
I read the book. I'm aware.
Oh, okay. So, right. And it's funny. So it's, right. So, I mean, people have been aware of this, right? So they don't know the mechanics, but they've been aware something's been going. It's crazy because that it's been going on for that long that people have known about it, where it's kind of like, and like, I think it's,
Yeah, like
but
I even point to like, it's very well, like I remember when I was in social studies as a kid, like they were talking about how black slaves when coming to America, like they would put them on the slave block and check their teeth. So even back then, like they just noticed the correlation. Like the slaves that had the good teeth made the trip without getting sick and dying. I just think like these were correlations that people kind of understood for hundreds of years.
yeah, and we forgot. It's funny. So I'm a big anime fan, right? And it's funny because there's this show called Vinland Saga, and at one part, the main character becomes a slave, right? It's like it's out and he gets taken into a place, and they have the whole thing like he's up at auction, and the guy's going around opening everyone's mouth and checking their teeth, and even the whole saying, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. It's like people. What's really funny too is just brought a flashback. Now my grandma lived to be 100.5 years old. And the funny thing is, it just popped into my head. She goes, what's funny, Matt? I said, what? She said, your grandfather, one of the reasons he wanted to date me, he said, we met up somewhere. He saw like some dance or something. He was in the Navy. And the first thing and the only thing he said, he goes, you got really nice teeth. He said to my grandma, and it was funny that,
Yeah.
I always attributed her health to like, the whole, I mean, this would be like the Weston A. Price stuff. She grew up on a farm. I mean, she had a horrible life beginning, but it's like, her mom dying when she was 4 and then getting abused by her parents, and they drop her off at this farm when she's like 7 and never see her again. But she grew up, all this natural food and all this other stuff. But what I never considered, just my grandpa saying that, it's so funny. He goes, oh, she had really nice teeth. And she thought it was so funny, but, she was always healthy.
Exactly.
She was a
I
librarian
remember.
until she was like, 97 or 96. Like she was literally working at a library until
Yeah,
she like couldn't do it. She was like 95, 96 years old.
I'm not surprised at all. I think that's gonna be like normal in the future. And like during the NFL shows, they would flash up these centenarians during the NFL games. So I remember like I was looking at some of them, and I tried to look them up, but like and then I just started looking up centenarians, and like they didn't, like it's not like the centenarians were the ones that like hit in the gym all the time. And like they were the most careful, but like a lot of these people, they lived lives like they didn't go to the gym, and like that generation, like they didn't do that stuff, and they made super healthy lives. And now like people are struggling, in their 50s and their 40s, and it just has so much about like it's not about this diet and exercise paradigm. Like the structure comes first.
Yeah. Oh, that just made me think again. It's funny. My guitar tech mentor, this is a great quote, right? So we talk about guitars, but his dad was in the Air Force, and he had a saying. It was called, if it looks right, it'll fly right. Pretty much, to me, that says everything. It's like, again, the form follows, well, I guess form follows function is another thing, but, if it looks right, it'll fly right. And it's funny, when you talk about being happy all the time, I think of this one YouTuber I watch where he's traveling all over the place. And you go to these like, relatively isolated tribes, people living more naturally. It's like you see the wide dental arches, beautifully developed faces. Just they're like, oh my God, these people are just beautiful. Like their skulls have developed so well, and they're happy. It's like these people are going around. It's like they're working like very long hours, like doing very monotonous stuff. Like they have, it could be like women picking what are the water chestnuts, right? You see, like I think it was in Esther Goklay's book. She shows that. It's like she talks about the posture of the rest of the body. And it did remind me, I forget this, before I found Reviv, there was one commenter on some YouTube video, I think it was from Argentina or something. He just made a comment. He's like, oh, everything follows the bite. He's like, oh, your forward head posture and everything else. He goes, you fix your bite. And he wouldn't elaborate on his techniques or what he suggested. That was, I think, last year, and that kind of piqued my curiosity because I said, wow, I have a friend that's very into PRI, and I was reading the Esther Goklay book, and it is funny that I kind of have to agree that some of this stuff, it's so complicated where it's like, you know what I mean? It's kind of like if we're developed naturally, I don't think it should be like a dog doesn't have to spend, 3/4 of its life trying to figure out how to walk properly. It's kind of like I think this is supposed to be an innate, you're supposed to grow and develop in a particular way and just not have to learn how to, you know what I mean? It's like you learn how to walk one time. You shouldn't have to be like on
I
a, yeah.
Yeah, I get into these conversations with this doctor friend of mine who I've mentioned a few times in past, clips and stuff. But anyway, he's been using a mouth guard for a year and a half, and he's trained as a doctor in the UK. But we always like he loves talking about how like we were designed to be perfect, and I agree with him. Like everything that I've seen on myself and whatnot, like we were designed to be perfect, and I think that the only thing you need to do is these biomechanics to achieve it there, because that is the blueprint. Like we were all designed to be almost like model level beautiful, functioning amazing, happy all the time, perfect body, right? That is like what we were designed to be made, and you get these biomechanics right, you revert back. And I almost think like it doesn't matter how much damage you took. And that's one message I want to like send out with this episode is that despite that there's a generation like yourself that didn't come out of the blocks really growing, like as adults because you struggled from an early age, that like I literally think like you're gonna be able to have plenty of time still to do, and that's why like I kind of brainwashed myself. I'm like, it doesn't matter that I'm 47. Like I think like I'm gonna function. I'm like running circles around kids that are 20, and that's the way it's gonna be like in my view for the next 50 years or more. And so that like there you might have lost some years, but if we're right on this, like who knows? Like maybe you're like looking like you're 30, functioning like you're 30 at 150. Like I think it goes that deep.
I think that's awesome. I really do. And I think that just what popped into my head is that's so critical to have that hope because I will tell you, like, from having friends and then my own situation, I can't tell you how many times it's like I get locked into this mindset where, oh, if I was better, then it would be fine. But it's that hopelessness of thinking like the damage is done and it's just over. Your life is done. You're like, oh, I'm never going to get better. And like, it's very, I've known, and unfortunately, from like the PSSD community, it's like I've had friends that have committed suicide, and I have other friends that were never on any drugs. And actually, a friend, people that didn't have any orthodontic work, but it's like their faces didn't develop well. Because it's not mandatory. Like you could be right out of the gate born screwed up, so that people could be wondering why this and the hopelessness. So like, oh, people that, and especially now with the younger generation, I know you mentioned like the whole looks maxing and people are becoming aware of like facial attractiveness. And then you have all these, particularly with men, they're like, oh my God, I know so many guys, like they just want to find a girl, get married, have a family. And they're just thinking like, oh my God, my face is so screwed up. And I'm like, I don't look good enough and I'm never going to be able to find anyone. And then also if they're like, again, low energy, can't function, it's like they can't get a nice career. They can't really do anything to support themselves and everything's just falling apart. And, I think that message of having hope, because this is the first thing I saw, because then you get the other people that will jump into, like, I've read so much like double jaw surgery that people think this is the only thing they can do. They're like, no, they've noticed what you've seen in the mewing community where like nobody's making progress. They're not getting better. So they're like, oh, well, the surgical options are the only, and it's what a dismal, I mean, I know it firsthand, this hopelessness where before I found this, I was like, I'm screwed. I'm like, I just got to kind of cut my losses. And like, I'm going to be single, childless, and like struggling to, you know what I mean? I think I actually saw a quote from you. I mean, I think you said, and I've had this thought a million times where it was like putting in like a million times more effort to get like 1% of the results that everyone else gets. You know what I mean? Where it's kind of like you try so hard and you're just like, it's like your car stuck in the mud. Your tires are just spinning and spinning. And it's like, so I think that this is the first time I've seen anything that offers any kind of hope that it's like, oh, well, even if you didn't develop properly, that you don't need to go in and pay $100,000 and have this guy break your jaw. And yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And like for me, like so I'm in a very different mindset because I'm 11 years into this. I've like I consider I took it to the end in 16, and I haven't made it back to the end since then, but like got myself better, worse, better, worse. So like I take this like, of course, this stuff is easy to fix and go back because I've done it so many times, like, and other people like still think it's like this leap of faith where it's like, all right, I'm 11 years going up and down like this. I know I can just zigzag back. Um, and so like, I am absolutely sure that you can get very healthy. And I'm going to try to prove to myself that you don't even need to do the exercise, the diet and all that. And you still get the perfection like that, it's going to take me more time, but like, I think if I can do that, like, it's gonna really show something like, "Hey, guys, like, we're designed to be healthy, like, you got plenty of time." And that's how I view it, is just, like, I'm not in any rush anymore to do anything. And I remember what it was like to be unhealthy, and you're kinda like, you think this clock is ticking, and you're weak, and, like, you gotta, like, just make do for whatever you can. See, you get this, like, I remember I used to think a lot about retirement. Like, back in 2020 when I was messed up, I would constantly think about, "Oh, man, like, what's the number I gotta get to make sure that, like, my retirement's good and blah, blah, blah," like, and that, like, my family's gonna be okay. Like, I would just think about that daily. Now, I never think about that shit. I'm like, "Fuck retirement," like, I'm gonna go balls out, like, steamroll motherfuckers.
Yep. Yeah. Wow. Man, I mean, it's just I mean, I can see it too, just again, just your expression and the way you talk, it's just so interesting. And it reminds me a lot too with how my grandma was. I mean, she was just go, go, go. I mean, to me, looking at her, like when she was in her 90s, it's like my grandpa died in like 1993, and she was living by herself. Every time you go over, full of energy, happy to see everyone. I mean, I don't think I ever saw her depressed ever until, and even at the very end, it was more, I think they had if you have the assisted living and stuff, it's a very depressing place. She was, but like that, barring that, I mean, literally we're saying up to like 97, 98 years old. I mean, it was like, it was just shocking. It was just shocking that the whole idea that there is this available method, because I'm coming out of a background literally up until a week ago, I was under the impression that it's like, well, you just, cut your losses, right? Like I've made some progress with things, but it's like the physical exhaustion and the inability to consistently work long hours, that never got better. It's like all the other stuff. I mean, I mentioned the NLP, and I learned so much, changing my mindset. You can do that. The mind is very powerful, but it's like at some point, I do think there are going to be physical limitations, like again, especially energy production. And you said, like, if your actual biomechanics, if that's what's screwing it up 100%, like you're just not going to be able to get past this, like this blockage where you're limited by your body effectively. Right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, like, what the other thing I want to stress is everyone will make progress using a mouth guard, right? Like, and they'll take it to a certain level and then it'll get really slow, is my experience, right? And the people that are really driven, like, they've got the chip on their shoulder and they're like, no, I'm going to take this as far as it can go. And because it gets less intuitive, right? And that's why I've given some hints on Skool, but like, people, you still got to spend the time and you got to figure out how it works. And then it's like a daily grind, right? Like, I'm daily grinding for a couple of years. And, but you see, like, the good thing about that daily grind, it's not like daily grind, like, oh, fucking like shoveling shit every day. It's like daily grind, like, you feel yourself getting better every day. So, like, it motivates you. But still, like, it requires that. So not everyone's gonna, like, take this nearly as where it can go, but the people that are really motivated and, like, they have that drive, they wanna learn, they wanna, like, man, I really wanna, like, live the rest of my life, like, on a completely different level. Like, those people are gonna do some amazing things, and I think those stories are gonna come out in, like, the next, years. But,
So, oh, sorry.
yeah, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, did you have any take on, it's funny because again, coming from all this stuff about people looking at like double jaw surgery, like what, like on the alternative options, like how to get people to avoid the pitfalls of, because you know what I mean? Like, you think somebody could do that and you're not fixing the biomechanics at all. So it's like they aesthetically might look better, but the same underlying biomechanics have not been corrected. Like, do you think that happens all the time, or it's like,
Of course, yeah. 'Cause I'm a very logical person, right? And so what I can logically say about how this works, right? Even now, like, I don't know if you can tell, like, this was from today, right? My scalp still stretches and rips daily, right? And if I shave my head, like, you see that shit all over my head. And so, like, what can you infer from that? You can infer that, like, the skin stretches to the point that it rips. So there's something about soft tissue kind of inflating, right? So if you're doing anything that doesn't have soft tissue inflating and having shit rip, like, you're not achieving anything, in my view. So if you're, like, playing around doing your jaw surgery, you're moving teeth around, you're, like, having an osteopath move your bone around, but, like, nothing stretching, like, you're not achieving much. That's how I view it.
Wow. Well, I mean, it's so fascinating because just again, this is brand new to me, but like having that shock doctor mouth guard and just over the past 5 days, I've noticed some interesting things. And like first it was like, and part of it could be maybe the beveled edge on it. I know it's a little bit more aggressive, but I noticed like my canine tooth, it was like the gum line that was irritating me a lot one day. And then I had this one tooth here was especially affected. The following day, it was like I'm feeling it way more in the back. And then I was feeling like a stretch around my cheekbones. And I noticed too, I'm going to be monitoring this. There's this spot on the back of my neck. There's been like a lump. It's like a fascial adhesion basically. And what I've noticed is very interestingly, over the past 5 days or so, there might be something there, but it's not a lump like it was. I mean, this was like a hard, like kind of nodule
Yeah.
and it's not there anymore. And it's like, I also noticed too, it's like I've had very, a little bit of a dowager's hump going on. I've always had that forward sloped, like when they say you stand up and notice where your hands are pointing, it's like my hands are in, I mean, exaggeration, but the forward slumping forward there. So I said, that's even right now, it's like I've had chronic, on my back, like in this, this whole area is always super tight and painful. And then my upper back but some of the stretching I would feel. And I was telling my friend, because at first I'm like, man, I don't know. I'm worried, like my gums receding so bad. And I was like, the first night I had the shock doctor in, and I'm talking to my friend about it. And of course they want to help you out and they don't want you to, regret anything. He's like, well, I don't know if I would jump in, but I said, man, having the mouth guard in actually felt so good. It was kind of that good hurt. It's like when you get like a good, like if you're like fascial release or anything, I said, man, I'm like just having it in. I was like, like virtually immediately, I'm like, regardless of what this is doing or isn't doing, I'm like, it just feels relaxing. I'm like, I had it, and I'm silent a lot during the day. I'll be working around the shop. I'm at home all day. So while I'm working on stuff here, it's like, I just popped the mouth guard in and I have noticed again, like, similar sensitivity to like when I had braces. You can tell the teeth are kind of shifting a little bit. And it's funny. I noticed this one that always, cause they've shifted for the worse over the years. I think I got a big gap in that tooth that was never there before. And down on the bottom, there's this one molar that's kind of cockeyed and, it's very asymmetrical on both sides. And this one was hurting a lot more a couple days ago because I had the mouth guard in. I'm like, this one tooth that's kind of cocked out and sticking out. I think it maybe has started to shift even a little bit more into line because then I noticed the next night I had it on, I woke up and it wasn't sensitive at all. Then it moved to a different location. So it's kind of, but just these, and I used to do like, again, my ex-girlfriend was like a licensed massage therapist and you get these temporary relief, right? And I went to her teacher. This guy was very good. And it's like your head feels like it's on a swivel for the rest of the day, but a couple days later, you're back to the same pain and discomfort you had. But it did teach me like the power of that, releasing that fascial tissue, and it's very interesting that you can feel with that mouth guard in. I was feeling it in my temples, in my cheekbones, and it has corresponded with again, I've actually noted I've been waking up earlier. It almost sounds ridiculous that like just over the last 5 days, I'm like, I'm just going to try this. And I've noticed I've been waking up early, like way earlier than I normally do. And I'm not really wanting to just lay around in bed feeling lethargic. I'm like, how am I waking up? And I'm like, I actually feel pretty good. And then I've just noticed I've been working a lot more during the day. And I'm like, could it be possible that it's like just that having that rapid of an effect? And I think part of it is, that calmness, because usually I'm in this like fight or flight, the anxiety and the overthinking. And it just was like, man, I put that mouth guard in and it's like a couple hours into it. I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, I just feel this kind of relaxation. Like stuff is just kind of literally, like you said, like fascial tissue
Yeah.
releasing. Yeah.
2 things I wanted to say. One was that the way I view it, that it works is, the soft tissue normally when you're not wearing it, is like, because of the curve of speed and all this thing, like it's deflating, right? So like the natural forces on your skull every single day until you started wearing a mouth guard were that this thing's deflating and your entire body's like struggling because like your skull's kind of crushing in on your brain, right? And so your entire body's kind of confused, like, okay, like my brain is being crushed. Like maybe I should lay in bed longer and all these other things that you're feeling. And I think it's just the body's reaction to that structural collapse. And so, by doing this process, you're like inflating it. And all of a sudden, like, your body's not saying, oh, my brain's being crushed. Your body's saying, oh, I'm fine. Like, and it doesn't have to fight the whole time. So that's how I intuitively interpret it. And the other thing I want to say, you're talking about the fascia and all that, like, so I was living in Vietnam. So I was first using articulating paper and using these dental splints back in 16 because I had an ALF dentist that was treating me remotely. He was in Texas, but he taught me how to do all this stuff. And then I was like a DIY guy because I had been doing hysterectomy before that. So I was just like experimenting my ass off. And in Vietnam, like it's very cheap to get massages and different kind of things. So I would go a lot, and then I would be checking my teeth afterwards. And I'd be like, yeah, like I do these massages. And then like I'm drilling on the front part of the splint and the curve is improving. And that's what I saw like later on as well when I was doing other things. So when you're talking about the massages, like I was seeing that, you get a massage or someone's a really good masseuse or an osteopath or whatever, and your curve of speed is improving, right? And you're probably getting a little bit of posterior open bite, but then you're sleeping without a mouth guard and it's just closing again. And so that's why, and it typically takes a couple of days for this thing to close. So you can get a really good like masseuse, whatever. It'll last a couple of days, and then that, improved curve of speed collapse down. And if you just continue wearing a mouth guard, each one of those massages compounds. Like the thing just keeps getting better.
Oh, because you're maintaining
Yeah,
right,
it never
that
collapses
stretch.
back.
Right. And I've noticed with the shock doctor, so it is pretty aggressive. I notice like right after waking up or even during the day, if I have it in for several hours, I will notice that the initial, like right after I take it out, like I've had I'm assuming, right, this open bite because I'll get it to the point where it's like immediately after removing it, the only teeth that are touching are like my incisors. It's like
Yeah.
my canines aren't even touching it. Immediately it'll be like, over the course of about a half an hour, it will slowly, okay, now the canines are touching. Now, we're getting more to the molars, and it's like, it's very interesting because you can feel that like initially right after taking it out, and I'm assuming that's what, like, basically if everything's getting stretched out and your mandible must be maybe moving forward a little bit or something's going on to where I'm like, the bite is definitely open. I'm like, these teeth, even the canines weren't touching immediately after taking it out. And I'm like, okay. So, and corresponding with that stretch, it is pretty incredible that I have noticed, having it in like over the past 5 days, the times I was not getting these fatigue attacks was the times I had the mouth guard in during the day. So the other day it's like I didn't have it in. I was kind of like my teeth were really sore and I'm like, okay, maybe let me take it a little easier. So I didn't have it in, and then it was back to business as usual where it was like I get a little bit of work done and I'm like bedridden for like 6 hours after. I'm like, I can't even get up. I just feel so awful. And it's funny you mentioned that neurological response where it's like that's what they say with aging, right? They're saying all this. I was reading about alveolar ridge resorption and they try to be like, oh, it's very normal, You'd love this, man. You'd love this. I was talking to a friend and I was showing them the before and afters of my wisdom tooth extractions. I'm 35 and like, well, keep in mind it's normal at 35. Your skull's going to really start shrinking a lot. And I'm like, well, I don't think it's supposed to do that. It's like, I don't think it's, it can't be, but right. Like they try to tell us it's normal with age. You always see these pictures of, people have these nice foregrown faces and they get older and they get that kind of crescent moon kind of everything's like sunken in and, their skull's just literally deflating like, as you said, like a raisin.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I wrote an article about aging, but the point I wanted to make was you cannot forget that some of the smartest people on earth uh are strong believers in longevity, right? Like there's like a guy that works in Google and he's a big longevity fanatic, and there's a lot of smart people that have like genius level IQ who've read all the books, done all the research, and they believe that you can live, for hundreds of years, like 150, 200 years easily. And that tells you something logically. That tells you like there's no proven thing that says no, like you have to die and this whole aging process has to work the way it works today. Like they all believe different. There's nothing they're seeing in the science. And therefore I like even though I haven't done as much research as they have, I can assume, all right, those smart guys have done all the research. Like they say that there's nothing that absolutely ages a human being. Like I think it's just these biomechanics. Like I have a feeling there is no aging. Like what they call aging is this flattening of the curve, this being the collapse of the skull and the spine that's associated to it. And so I find that so exciting. Like I literally think, in our lifetime, humans are going to make it to, 150 plus years old easily based
Mhm.
on these biomechanics.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, right? Because people, and we've had people live like I forget what the oldest lived person has been, but it's like that can't. You look at these people, like even with my grandma, made like 100.5 years old, and it's like this can't possibly be, because you look at everything they went through. I mean, when I say trauma, I mean physical body, like what your skeleton and your just you know what I mean, the breakdown of the physical body. So many of these people, I mean, like we all have, their bodies have just been through hell. And I'm like, there's no way that if a human was truly optimal, like we've never seen that. Like, how would we know what the potential is if we've never seen, right? Like somebody growing up with like ideal. And what's exciting about the biomechanics is, you're put like the center of that power is within the person's body, right? It's not like, oh, I have to grow up in the perfect, and have the perfect family and the perfect this and all this stress. It's like, no, if we're designed, which I agree, we are designed to be perfect. I really believe that. And I think all this stuff too and this is the conclusion I came to with my friend. They talk about attractiveness, people that are obsessed with finding a partner and all this. And I really do think it should just come down to like features and personality and stuff. It's like we're all supposed to be, like you said, like model qual. I really believe that. And I think about dogs a lot too in terms of that, where you're like, unless there's something seriously wrong with them, it is like
Yeah.
a difference of features. It's like they all have, it's like, oh, this breed is like we have a Morkie, it's like a Maltese and a Yorkshire
Yeah.
Terrier. And it's like you look up pictures, their snouts all pretty much look the same. You know what I mean? They have little
Yeah,
variations and stuff, but
you don't even need to look at dogs for that. Like just you were mentioning like the Amazon tribes and stuff. Like I remember being in Kenya when I was 19, 20 years old, and like I was with the Maasai tribe, and man, they all look like Michael Jordan. I was like, how they all got like beautiful smile, like perfect skull, perfect body, six pack, and like nobody's like running around the hot desert the whole day.
right. Oh, that was a thing too with my grandma said she thought it was so funny, so she was born in 1920 and she grew up around a bunch of farmers and she thought it was so funny. Like my grandpa used to make fun of people that would exercise. He's like, this is ridiculous. It's like, it's like, what do you have to do that for? It's like, they just go out. Their exercise was just farming, like picking their vegetables and like whatever they had to do to survive. That was it. He said, he's like, I couldn't imagine. It's like, why would you ever lift a weight or do anything that you expend energy you didn't have to? He's like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's like,
I like the metaphor I love using now is like it's like the lion who like is in Africa and he just sits his ass under the tree the entire day, except for that like 10 minutes when he wants to eat and he goes chases or something like that. But like he's not like running around for the hell of it. And
yeah,
I think we're the same. Like there's like running around for the hell of it. Like we're gonna look back at the fact that all these gyms exist. Like they're all gonna shut down eventually, and people just like we were so stupid.
right. I mean, it's funny, right? So you said like living with the Maasai, right? It's so, oh my gosh. It's like, it is so funny because, right. I don't think it was ever meant to be this difficult, right? It's like, that's another thing I think I read on your site. And like that echoed with me 100. I've been saying that for years. I'm like, I have a lot of friends that feel the same way. They're like, why is life so hard? They're like, everything is so difficult. And it's like, yeah, I mean, if your brain is being literally squashed by your skull, I mean, and again, the thing with fascia, right, you mentioned it's like a blanket, like your body's made out of one sheet, right? And something gets pulled out, it's going to pull everything else out of whack. And,
Yeah. Yeah, and
it's
I think you combine this physical plot thing, and then like there's a real economic thing that has changed that, my mom, who's a generation above me, talks about. Yeah, like she was able to come to America, with very little education, get a good job, raise a family, buy a house in New York, live a good life. Like that, because of the wealth disparity and all these things. Like even if you were healthy, like America's already gotten tough for your average Joe. And then you like cut them at the knees with this shit. Like 98% of like the new generation, like unless they're living on their parents' money, they're screwed, right?
Yep.
Like so
It
it's just like a perfect storm.
Wow, I mean, it is very interesting, right? Because, yeah, with the biomechanics, it's I feel like there's been a lot of shifting of goalposts with things, and again, being kind of steeped in this culture. I mean, I'm pretty isolated. I don't go on forums outside of very rare occasions and usually guitar stuff, but, like the younger generations, this is where the whole meme with the mewing stuff, they got the people with the Chad filter on where their jaw, and you got all the kids that are, pointing to their, it's like become a meme. I mean, which is funny in a way because it's spreading people's awareness, but it stops at, it's kind of like the mewing community currently has the monopoly, right? They're currently like the biggest shareholder of the like, oh, the, truthers for facial development. And again, I've just found this a week ago, and it's just like, I'm a big fan of consolidating information. I've been learning so many different things my whole life, and it's like I love it when things start to come together. And it's like now this is like one point everything starts to make sense, and it's lining up with what I believe too. Where it's kind of like, yes, we are designed, we're supposed to be perfect, and like we're kind of dealing with like you said, you're cut off at the knees with all this stuff, and these socioeconomic factors with oh, it's just a nightmare. You got people talking about intergender dynamics, and there's this whole war basically, right? And people are now they're obsessed with this is mostly again this whole like looks maxing thing, right? There's people that started out, why is my life so hard? I can't get the ball rolling. I'm not dating. And it's like they want very simple things in life and they can't achieve them. So then it just like, oh, this must be it. My face is screwed up. And then they get into these communities where they're looking very isolated at, I mean, that's what I just gave up because I'm like, I'm not getting double jaw surgery. So I was like, well, I'm just screwed, and you look at it like, but the internet culture, that's what I'm trying to say is like, it kind of scares me. Cause like I'm 35, I can it's a little easier to see through stuff and think critically. I mean, if I was like 14 years old with the problems that I had, I mean, that was like, it is pretty frightening now. Like people having the wrong information, like seriously, the wrong information and all this, like again, shifting of the goalposts, like, oh, it's this and you can't do anything about it. And then you end up with these like, the Elliot Rodgers of the world, where these young guys are like going mental. They're just giving up because it's like they're, believing like, oh, there's no hope. And the irony is like they're not even understanding what the problem is. That was like the NLP stuff I was doing, where I know for a fact, like having been on these psych drugs, and like when people are normal, healthy, I know for a fact, it's like there's so much you can do with just your own mind. You don't need these drugs. But I mean, if you go out and say that, like if you go out and say like you don't need orthodontic treatments, I mean, people are just ready to run you up the flagpole, right? Because we're it's like with the hand washing guy. It's like, well, I'm seeing the evidence that this works. I know it works. The mortality rate's dropping, and then you're telling the truth. But then you've got a whole society that's ready to
Yeah.
burn you at the stake.
Well, what I find hilarious, I learned this on LinkedIn because I came from the corporate world, uh, where there's a lot of people posting on LinkedIn, and then I started running my own business, and then eventually I started, Reviv, and during that, like I evolved from like caring what people, like being sensitive on LinkedIn and professional the way most people are, to not giving a fuck, right? Like, and so what I realized is that I could not give a fuck because like I don't have a boss. Like I'm my own boss, and now like I have a sustainable business and I have savings, whatever. So I don't give a fuck what they think. But like these dentists, they're professionals, they run a professional practice. So now when they comment, like if I want to, like I'll just like blow up on them And I know that, like, they can't really blow up on me because that's, like, their real name. They run a professional practice, and I'm, like, known for being an asshole anyways, so
Right. Man, it's really, that's so funny because, oh man, that is such a good point. When you're not beholden to anything, right? And you can speak the truth. And this is one thing I really wanted to drive home. So, and it's like I got my guitar here, big guitar guy, but I take it as a professional responsibility. And I would usually go after the psychologists and psychiatrists, like especially all the work I did on myself and with other people. This guy Robert Smith's method, right? All this NLP tapping stuff, But anyway, with all of that, um, with my guitar stuff, I said, how is it that I am putting more effort and care into a setup I'm doing for someone, a guitar setup for like $50. Meanwhile, I used to know I would go in to get checked up for my 14-year-old kid on antipsychotics, and I wasn't psychotic, by the way. It's like I was depressed, but I had no psychosis. And like anyway, you go in for 5 minutes. And he's like, "Okay, well, how's the medication going?" I said, "I don't know. I mean, it's the same as it was last month." "All right, well, I don't think we need to change anything, right off the thing." And $150, it was like literally you're in there for 2 minutes, you're out, $150 bill. And I'm thinking like all these years later with guitar, and I'm going to tie this back to the dentist you talk about. Like, I really feel like people need to, like, as a professional, you should be passionate about, like, I've had so many times I was doing something with guitars that I was doing it wrong for years. And it's like, I took it as my professional responsibility to deal with the cognitive dissonance. I'm like, I can't do this the same way. I mean, all these people I did this work for, and this is just a guitar. You know what I mean? Like, and I hold myself to that standard with an instrument. I'm like, what about the people that are dealing with human beings? It's like, you can't hold yourself to a, so I get very pissed off. It's like, but, in my mind, I'm like, as a professional, it's like, you've got to sack up. It's like, you owe it to your clients to help them. And like, if it's even worse, if you know that you're damaging people and because you can't deal with the cognitive dissonance, you're like, well, fuck it. Just, let it, I'm not going to deal with
yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah.
And,
I think that's
yeah.
what happens, because I've been friends of friends of, I have this one sir who was like, he was an orthodontist, he was a friend of a friend, but like he quit and, he concluded like he was just damaging people with orthodontics for many years. And in my career, I worked for this one corporate in Visa for a while ago, and like I had a very nice position. I was kind of an executive flying around in business class and a very good life, very good salary, all this. But I was like, I knew that like the company was like, whether I was there or not, like people were gonna use their Visa cards. Like it didn't friggin' matter what I did. Uh, and so like I kind of like treated my job like that. Like I would just like roll into these cities and go out all night, and I just didn't give a shit because I knew that like what I did really didn't really matter, but it paid well. And so I think dentists are like this, right? Like a lot of them, I haven't met that many dentists that I consider smart. Like I almost think the people go into it are like they're like very mediocre intelligence and they just want a stable, high paying job. It's like your average dental profile. And so they were never the people that pushed themselves, but they were the people that sought stability. And so they get into this job and they say, okay, like I'm not really helping people. Right. Like, and it's probably similar with like psychiatrists because they're like just giving drugs and they're not seeing anyone get better. And they're like, all right, like what I do doesn't really matter, but it pays well and it's stable. So I'm just going to keep doing it. And like, I'm going to like check out a little bit. And I think that's what happens. Like it's just, it becomes about the money because they realize that like, whereas like with me, I see I'm helping people. Like I'm going to be passionate. And I think if dentists actually saw they were helping people, like they'd be passionate.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So, no, so I agree completely with that for sure. Yeah. They just check out and keeping in mind too. They're just like the rest of us are probably damaged as well. So it's like, they might be run down and, you know what I mean? When people are overworked and they're tired and they feel like crap, it's like the last thing you're going to do. It's like, you want to give to other people out of an abundance. Like you feel great. It's like, I want to help other people feel great. I mean, you feel like crap all the time and you're in survival mode and it's me first all the time. It's like, there's no room to even care. Like, well, whatever. Even if I'm damaging people, I'm getting a paycheck. So fuck it. Yeah. Yes. Oh gosh. I have heard that too, and maybe who know, to the those mercury fillings I had, the mercury vapors and stuff. Who knows? But yeah, I have heard that same. Yeah.
Anyway, thank you very much, Matthew, for joining. I love this session. And we want to make this like at different intervals. So it'd be great to have you on when, you're at the next stage in your journey, and hear how you're doing and what you've concluded and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I really appreciate jumping on here like this.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. This is really enjoyable. So thanks for having me on.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
All right.